Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why we chose to implement MyPath, what brought us there, how our experience was, and what we hope to do moving forward with it. And it's good that we just heard from MC because that was actually the genesis of our implementation, was looking into possibilities for tools to help our students with career exploration. There we go. So you heard a lot about what MyPath can do, so I'll try to go over those slides quickly. But I'll talk a little bit about how we think it's going to help our students. The primary reason that the whole institution decided to agree to implement MyPath was it was an improved landing page after CCC Apply. A lot of other reasons, but that was the primary reason we didn't have any disagreement about implementing it. And as you may be aware, there are a lot of different technologies that come in, opportunities for you to implement, and to be choosy, there's got to be a good reason and not a lot of objection right now. So this was the landing page. Some of you are familiar with this. If you haven't filled out a CCC Apply application, I hope you'll do that because it's good to have empathy for that student experience. This was the landing page that they got to, and our feedback was frequently that students would get to this page and then they would just close their browser. They weren't really sure that what this meant to them or how to turn this into their next steps. Here is a direct quote. If you've been involved in some of the conversations around the improvements ongoing to CCC Apply, you may have seen this before, but one of the students interviewed a few months ago said this. After they submitted it, they thought they should get an email right away, talking to their friends. The friends had gotten theirs right away. In the long run, the student found out that their email in the application was wrong, so they ended up calling. They waited 2 weeks and thought, there's no way, and they were just thinking, I want to go to college. And so this is a common story that we hear from our applicants who, for whatever reason, fall through the cracks after they submit their application. So this is what it looks like now for a student after they finish their application to our college. This is that landing page that they get to. And I think it's easy to see that that's an improvement over this. So again, not a difficult conversation campus-wide to say, hey, are we okay turning this on? Because it goes from that screen to that screen. And so that was an easy thing. This is particularly the thing that we think is helpful for those students who were previously falling through the cracks. There's this didn't get a welcome email link. And if they click on it, it takes them currently to this page about our student onboarding center where they can contact somebody. There's this particular page cycles through a few different things that can help the student and let them know who to contact. So here's some data about the usage of this in particular. Just since October 1st, we've gotten some measurements on this, and the reason why we're only looking back 2 weeks right now is that, as Mike described earlier, the navigation from the last part of the application when they finish submitting over to MyPath is much more obvious to the student than it used to be, and so many more of the students are actually proceeding to MyPath. It was far less than 50% before, and now, as you can see, it's almost all of the students. And then of those students who went over there, over 250 of them accessed that didn't get their welcome email. And so they were able to navigate to that information about our Student Help Center. And then over 200 students also access information about their financial aid eligibility. And those are two things that we think are very important for students to possibly think about right after they apply. So some other reasons we chose MyPath in particular, again, we were looking at a variety of technology tools. Most of them would cost us money and be quite complicated to implement. But there's default content available, so that makes it very easy to adopt. Each MyPath implementation is customizable by the college, which is very important. The easy click and drag admin interface makes it, again, easy to assign somebody as the content manager for this. The ability to target the advice cards to students based on things in their application, as Mike mentioned previously, was very attractive. And then for it to be branded to our college versus something that looks like it's a statewide thing. And as you probably know, students are often confused about, well, what's the difference between applying to the college and the CCC Apply thing, especially a student who's only applied, this is the first college they've applied to, they've never seen this before, so it can be a bit confusing to them. I'll show you a little bit of the default content in case you haven't seen it. Makes it really easy to get up and going. One of these is the financial aid eligibility page. So if you just accept that default content in one of your advice cards, it takes the student to a page that looks like this, has some pretty good information for the student, and there are actually quite a few pages to choose from. This is one of the ones that we are still using and sending students to. We want them to figure out if they should apply for the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, or if they're not going to apply at all. Here is an example of how we customize that Pay for College advice card. There's eligibility was already there. The Apply Now for FAFSA was one of the options, I believe, already there. But we recently added this, or Apply Now for DREAM Act. And the student, it can simply click on eligibility, determine if they're eligible for FAFSA, and if they're not, they may be eligible for DREAM Act. Here is another example of some custom content. We want to use our mobile app as a tool to onboard students, to give them push notifications about their next step in the onboarding process. So we're hoping that as soon as they're done with the application, that they go ahead and download the app. And we're seeing good numbers even in the last 2 weeks of students clicking on that after they finish the application. So I mentioned before the easy click and drag admin interface. It looks just like this. Click on the edit button if you want to add a card to one of the existing. Then you go here, just hit add for your new task. You enter a title, description, a URL if you choose to, and the expected duration. This option we like because if you want the student to have one-click experience, you can launch from dashboard. So the thing that you want, you could have one advice card, and if you want the student simply just to go to a certain page on your website where you have a lot more information, then they can go directly there without having to stop at an additional page. Or if you want to tailor that experience a little further, you can open it in a new window or tab. So here's what it looks like. I just showed you how we added one. This other important step I just added is now showing up in the advice cards for the student. Very easy to do. And then if you, like I mentioned, you have that launch from dashboard option, or you can open in a new window. If you don't click launch from dashboard, it takes the student to a second screen where each of the steps are outlined, and the links are right there. If you have a link, it tells the student how long it's going to take and the description of the new step that you just added. So as mentioned, you can brand it with your college logo and college image. One thing that's really nice is the feedback on the completed items. So as a student progresses through, again, you can have 4 cards showing at a time or fewer, but as they complete items, it's evident to them that they've done that. We like that the next step is clear. It's not checked. It's still a bullet point to be done. And then a couple of things just that guided our implementation. We've been trying to use discipline in all of our communications and all of our user interfaces with students as we refine them. We try to use one and only one next step for the student. We try to give immediate feedback on the step that they just completed whenever possible. We try to use clear language, and we aim for a 9th grade reading level maximum. We try to link to information rather than displaying text whenever possible. Ideally, we'd like all of the content students see to be targeted to them based on what we know about them. And then, of course, the content that they see and when they see it should be relevant to where they are in the process and what they're trying to do. MyPath helps us to accomplish most of these things. So advice I would have for other colleges who are considering implementing MyPath is not to wait. There's really no harm in doing this. It simply improves that landing page for the student, and you can make further enhancements from there. Because there's so much default content available and even those suggested advice cards to start with, you could go live with it and have an immediate improvement with very little work by your college. You can use some of those interest cards that your institution agrees on. All students might want to know about 1, 2, 3 things, and put those advice cards in to get started. Get feedback from students after they start using it, and if you have onboarding staff or if you have enrollment specialists or outreach, they'll definitely be able to give you that feedback as students go through the process. And then lastly, just put some kind of plan in place to review the usage of that. Hopefully also get those reports from the tech center like we've been doing, and then use that to tailor and improve your content over time. So one thing I wanted to mention next, we're hoping to enhance our implementation by leveraging the data that's in CCC Apply to tailor those cards to students. The reason we haven't done that yet is there's decisions to be made, and we haven't invested a lot of time in making those decisions. But there's a lot of value in doing that, so that will be what we plan to use as our next phase. This has just been a limitation on our side to have those meetings and to make those decisions and recommendations. But the product has future enhancements, which we're also hoping to use. Once the two-way integration is available, we intend to send our students back over to MyPath for certain activities, and then we can get the data back from MyPath about those activities. There's quite a few things. Placement changes because of AB 705 is one example where we might leverage features that within MyPath rather than trying to build something in-house ourselves. There's actually quite a bit of functionality in the MyPath product that we aren't using yet, so we're going to look at using that more and more over time. And that's all I have.